I am a believer, and there is no question. Charlie Kirk's assassination is the biggest political assassination. It's not the biggest attempted political assassination since JFK, but it is the biggest political assassination in the United States since JFK. When you consider the impact that Charlie Kirk has had on the political arena over the past decade plus, assassinating Charlie Kirk would have been the equivalent of assassinating Billy Graham in the 1980s. To me, that's basically the political equivalent in terms of the impact. When you think about how impactful Billy Graham was to the GOP for several decades and the influence he had over the Christian vote, you would think that somebody like Charlie Kirk and the impact he had through Turning Point USA is something that would rival that if people were truly to understand why the impact was so big, regardless of whether you like Charlie Kirk or not, and I was no fan of his. But you also have to recognize, they say you recognize game. Well, I am recognizing game. And I'm sure you would agree, at least to an extent, that the biggest political assassination in the United States since JFK was Charlie Kirk.
It's huge, and it is definitely connected to Israel. That one we have no question about. I did a show with Sabi Sabs. I don't know if you know her. She has a great
friend of the show. She's good people.
And I was on 4 days after the assassination, and turned out to be her most popular show ever. And I didn't know a whole lot about Charlie Kirk, but I know a whole lot about how the world works. I think a little bit, at least. And so a lot of the things that I'm going to say now, I said way back then, but now there's a solid factual foundation for them. People, first of all, we have to get over our bias against Charlie Kirk. You know, you're not a fan. I'm not a fan. I'm sure a lot of listeners to this program are not fans. But he
was a hell of a talent. I'm not going to say that.
Talented.
Exceptionally talented. He was an exceptional orator. He had a way of commanding an audience. That's good. He had an exceptional way of commanding an audience that you have to respect. And he was an exceptionally tall individual. He was 6'5". And when you can command a room like that, you got to respect it. Like, whether you like it or not, he had an impact. So no one gets assassinated unless they're causing a problem. And he was causing a problem.
Exactly. So whether you liked him or loathed him or loved him, you know, that's really not the point. The point is the one that you just made. This was a very important person politically in the United States, and his skill as a on stage, he had super star quality. And the thing that I pointed out on the Sabi Sab show is that this is overlooked too often. He quote started Turning Point USA when he was 18, which is a falsehood. He didn't start it when he was 18. An adult who'd been around the block more than once founded Turning Point USA and brought Charlie in as the talent, because, as you pointed out, you know, it's a sort of a thing that you're born with. You can train and get good at, but there are just certain people that are just really good. Like Obama was one of them. Clinton was one of them. You know, they're just good in front of a camera. And Charlie Kirk at 18.
Believe me, I'm very good in front of the camera.
Yeah. So it's a gift. And this fellow in Chicago recognized it and built this whole organization around Charlie Kirk. And it was originally a Tea Party spinoff, and it was a conservative reformist movement. You know, let's get rid of the fake. Their idea was, let's get rid of the fake conservatives and do real conservative stuff. And we've got to go after the youth. And here's a guy that can reach the youth, and let's put him on the road, and so on. The other thing that people need to know about Charlie Kirk is that, you know, when they think of people like Candace Owen or Tucker Carlson, who have, you know, big platforms and are known by millions, they are a drop in the bucket compared to the power he had. He had his organization. We need to differentiate between him and that organization. There were roughly 600 employees of Turning Point USA and all its various.
Oh yeah.
I am a businessman, I confess, you know, and so I know what it's like to have to pay you got to pay people every week, like you can't say, I'll catch you next month, and to have 600 employees is a significant enterprise. So this was not a natural, spontaneous, organic thing. He was charming. He was amazing on stage, but he didn't get there on his own, and he didn't even run the organization. And we know that because if you're on a private jet, which is how these guys traveled, every night, going to the next place and the next place and the next place, you're not sitting down with the CFO. You're not talking with your banker. You're not talking with your CEO.
I mean, in many ways, it is like being a rock star where you really do not have a moment to breathe. And when you're on tour, if you will, like going on these college tours, you have an assignment. And it is something where there's a certain level of responsibility that you have to conduct. And I do believe in his mind, he was in control of the organization. But the more things started to evolve after October 7th, it became clear that he wasn't in charge. He, in fact, probably didn't really know where the money was coming and going, which is why you have so many suspicious characters in the fold, not just Erica Kirk, but also people like Tyler Boyer, people like Mr. McCoy. There is something to be said for a whole bunch of, let's just say operatives surrounding Caesar, if you will. And the next thing you know, when he thinks that he's the one who's really in control, they show him, no, you never really were. Sorry to break it to you. But you have a choice. You can continue going on just the way things are, or you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. Which one do you want? And he's like, oh, I'm going to get into trouble. And sure enough, he did. And that's why we're going to go through this. We're going to stop and go. But friend of the show, James Lee, in conjunction with a handful of other people, put together this nice compilation. It's a long video that I cut down to a little over 5 minutes, but I think it more or less crystallizes exactly how we got to where we're at.
Our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have Charlie Kirk with us, and Charlie Kirk is a young man from Turning Point. He's the founder of the organization.
When Charlie Kirk founded Turning Point USA with businessman Bill Montgomery in 2012 as a senior in high school, the mission was very clear. Economic libertarianism, small government, low taxes, typical Tea Party type messaging.
Graduate from high school this coming June, we're handed a diploma. That's also an invoice for hundreds of thousands of dollars that my generation's gonna have to pay off through interest, high taxes, and a stagnant economy.
But something happened between the years of 2018 and 2019.
The summer of 2018, it's a very important summer in Charlie Kirk's life. That's the summer he met his future wife, the former Erica Fransve. The following year, the year that began after he met Erica, the list of officers, directors, and key employees listed on tpusa's Form 990 exploded. So too did the revenue and expenses.
If we examine Turning Point's IRS 990 filings, we see a massive jump in the organization's revenue, almost 3 times, jumping from approximately $10.8 million in 2018 to nearly $29 million in 2019. Charlie Kirk goes from making about $80,000 a year in a relatively still small organization with just 3 officers to over $290,000 a year and a massive expansion in the organization's leadership with the likes of Tyler Boyer and Stacey Sheridan joining the organization at this time. Shortly thereafter, the organization's economic libertarian message was gradually phased out until it ultimately disappeared in favor of Judeo-Christian nationalism.
Now, if you ask me, this is one of the more significant developments of this particular story. I look back upon where Turning Point USA, when it first came out, and clearly there was a desire to move in the direction of right-wing populism in response to President Obama. And the person who had the most going for them back then, it was Ron Paul. And Ron Paul was really knocking it out of the park in many respects. And ultimately, the neocons booted him from any type of a established baseline where they could grow some type of a movement within the party. You could call it the Tea Party, but the fact of the matter is, it was a movement where you had a very substantial anti-war sentiment that was growing in the right-wing circles. Enter this growing faction, which becomes Christian nationalism, but it's really evangelism, pro-Israel evangelism for the most part. Everything changes. Now, whether or not Charlie had the type of control to say, I don't really want to go in this direction, I think they're also giving a little too much credit to the idea that Erica Kirk is responsible for this happening. I don't know. What do you think? Because I can see, and remembering now that the evolution of Turning Point USA is very real. It didn't happen overnight, but it definitely happened over time for sure.
Gotcha. Well, definite evolution happened. And I want to go back to the idea of a young man. I mean, he was 32 when he died, being thrust into the limelight with this 600-person company running everything. He probably knew very little about what was going on, other than the fact, hey, I've got to be in Orlando today, and Annapolis tomorrow, or whatever his tour issue was. And then he had his podcast, which, as you know, takes a lot of time. So he was fully booked. I think, and I've heard Candace Owens refer to this, and it makes a lot of sense. I can envision this. He wanted to reach more people, and somebody made the point to him about the reality that there is a huge Christian marketplace out there. It's massive. If you're not in that marketplace, you're not aware of it. But if you look around, there are Christian publishing companies, Christian filmmaking companies, lots of Christian TV. I mean, it is a mega business, and they have a direct line to lots and lots of people. So it's possible that they said to him, Charlie, here's a way we can get the message out to even more people if we connect with all these faith groups. And if you present it that way, it sounds pretty harmless.
Yeah.
Except these faith people, these professional, Religion Inc. people, they're not harmless at all. I mean, they're some of the most gangster people that have ever walked the earth. In fact, if people want to get an education on this, there was a film that won the Academy Award in 1973 for Best Documentary called Marjoe, Margoe. And it's about a guy who was raised as a little junior preacher, and he'd go out on the circuit. Oh, it's the other thing you need to know about this Christian business is it's business. They bring in lots of money. I mean, imagine an industry where you don't have to do anything you don't have to make a product. You don't have to render a service. No. You just tell people, hey, I represent God. Give me your money. And I'll help you out.
And it actually is pretty funny when you see some of the more lowbrow type of pastors that are out there wearing all the bling and being like, hey, I got to be rich in order for you to get into heaven. I'm thinking they really are testing the waters to see how far they can take this before the people in the congregation start saying, really? Is that what God's will is all about? No, it's not.
Well, in creating cults, which is what a lot of these organizations really are, they don't really care if what they're saying makes any rational sense or not. In fact, the less sense it makes, the better. They just spew it out there, and they see who sticks around. And the people who stick around are hooked. And now they've got their suckers. And if you watch this documentary about this fellow Marjoe, again, he started out as a baby preacher. His parents put him on the circuit. He quit when he was a teenager and tried to become an actor. And then some filmmakers said, Marjoe, tell us about your days as a traveling preacher. And he said, I'll do more than that. I'll go back out on the road and show you how I did it. And he literally explained, he'll go on the stage and he'll do his routine. It's show business. It's show business with a spiritual dimension to it. And it's highly lucrative. And there are tens of millions of Americans hooked into it.
Well, you also have to remember, depending on where in the United States that you come from, and remember, we've been talking about this at great length, Jewish Zionism is predominantly in the wealthy coastline city areas, particularly New York, Miami, Los Angeles, San Francisco, places like that, Chicago, etc. Christian evangelism, Christian Zionism is very popular in the South, the Deep South in particular, and the Heartland. And what do these regions have in common? There's not a lot of economic infrastructure there. The church becomes the center, not just of town, but of your life. Your entire life is wrapped up in this. And when you have these grifting sons of bitches that seize on, this is why I've always had more sympathy for conservatives than liberals when it comes to political naivete, because they're not well read. They're not brought up in communities where education is emphasized or even funded well, for that matter. These are congregates for a political economic system that is designed to treat them as pawns in the grand scheme of the machine. And that's who they are. These people that are here, they're not bad people. They're extremely misguided, and many of them are hate-filled because that's what's instilled in them from the time that they're young. But they're doing what they think they need to do because they believe if they don't, they're going to burn in hell for eternity when they die.